Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Attention Retention. I'm your host, Jackie McManus, CEO and founder of KJ Media. We're a recruitment advertising agency specializing in talent attraction, optimizing the hiring process, and driving efficiency to help your workforce grow in the trucking industry. And on this show, we dive into the world of recruitment, retention, and recognition by interviewing industry leaders and experts as we unpack strategies, challenges, and successes surrounding these three critical aspects in workforce management. And this week, I am so excited to be joined by the Vice President, Driver Experience, Jason from the ContainerPort Group. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so founded in 1971, ContainerPort Group has become one of the top providers of transportation and logistics services, and really standing out by partnering with owner-operators at a level of excellence, I have to say, on the marketing end. I really saw that shine through and what you guys offer to owner-operators. So I'm so excited to have you on and to dive deep into recruitment, retention, and recognition. So, but before we get started, could you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and how your journey in becoming the Vice President of Driver Experience at the ContainerPort Group?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think like a lot of people, I ended up in this industry kind of by chance.
Sure.
Didn't seek it out, but got into the industry kind of as an entry-level member of a safety department. And, at that point, I was just managing physical files. Back then, there were physical files, and you'd update everything, and you'd put it in that file. And it was kind of a unique way to learn about the industry and learn about driver qualifications, truck qualifications. But it eventually led to me being a recruiter. I was a recruiter here at ContainerPort Group before being a manager, recruiting manager, and I left for a couple of years and came back in 2022 as Vice President of Driver Experience, overseeing our recruiting and driver recognition efforts. It's been kind of a full circle thing for me coming back, but very, very excited to have been given the opportunity to return. I think we've done some really cool things, and we're really excited. And you mentioned our marketing department, and we do have a very, very good marketing team, and it does help when you have a story that kind of writes itself. So being around for over 50 years and kind of being there from the beginning of containerization, it kind of helps write that story about who we are, where we've been, and where we're going to go to.
And that's exactly it. It was, I'm a marketer by trade, but you can tell the difference when it's maybe a little bit fluffed up, if you will, versus marketing efforts that are really true to the core. And that's really what I saw when, researching your company. So appreciate you with the intro. And I want to start off by talking about recruiting, right? So this is all in your realm, recruiting, retention, recognition. But what would you say in today's market? Things have evolved so much over the years. You mentioned the paper applications, years ago, and nowadays, drivers can just one click and apply to 15 different jobs. Technology has really advanced so much over the years. But what would you say are some of the more successful approaches to attracting and recruiting owner-operators in today's market?
Well, you kind of nailed it. I mean, at the beginning, there was paper applications, and I can remember drivers applying to work for me when I first started as a recruiter. They would fax me their applications. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is kind of a unique challenge, or maybe a newer challenge that we're seeing now is a lot of drivers are busy. They don't always want to communicate over the phone like they historically have. So, they want to move fast. They want to move more digitally, and being in a position to be flexible with how you communicate with those drivers, I think it really puts you in a position to work with those drivers based on what their preferences are. Not being very stuck in a way of like, I can only do this over the phone, or I can only do it this way or that way. And being flexible and working with that individual is really important. And I think it also allows you the opportunity to kind of start to build that relationship with the independent contractor and kind of get to know who they are. And it's for us, it's really important about relationships and kind of starting to build those relationships from the beginning.
Being nimble, being flexible, whether your company is, 50 trucks or 2,000 is so critical, because if you think about it, we're recruiting to 5 different generations of the workforce, from baby boomers all the way down to Gen X, Z, Y. I'm not sure what we're on now, but everyone has different ways of communicating and preferred methods. Where I started my career as a recruiter myself, and I remember those faxes, and you just picked up the phone, and that's the way it was. We're now we're finding that majority of drivers like to text, but there is a big percentage that still want to talk to a recruiter on the phone, which is fair. And so it is really about those recruiters being flexible in how they communicate with independent contractors to build that relationship from the beginning. Because I truly believe that it starts with the first phone call. Those first 30 seconds, those first 2 minutes are so critical in the candidate experience.
Agreed. You get one shot at the first impression.
Yeah, and so focusing on that, I think is really critical. But with so many opportunities in today's market for independent contractors, how do you guys make yourself stand out and have a competitive edge?
Well, it's a very competitive market out there, obviously, especially when the market heats up, you're competing against the whole industry. But, I think one of the things that helps us is the work we do is intermodal work, so we can really offer people. Most of our drivers are home every day. Most of our independent contractors go home to their families every night. And it's a big selling point. And with our team, what we try to do is we try to focus on what we can control. There's a lot of things that we can't control. We can't control how quickly, the independent contractor wants to get started. They may not be on the same timeline that we are. So, but we try to control what we can control, communicate with the drivers, be available to them. That's one way to help yourself stand out. But also too, talking about our history, and letting them know that we've been around for a very long time. We plan to be around for even longer. And I think that speaks to, who we are. And I think in a lot of cases, what they're looking for is they're looking for a place to be for a while as well.
Yeah.
So you talk about some of the success stories of some of our existing independent contractors, how long they've been here. And, I think that's something that's very appealing to a lot of drivers.
It's interesting because, the stats say that drivers move positions X amount. I think it's every 4 to 6 months, but really majority of drivers really want to stay with the company, hire to retire type mentality. And the reason they're typically moving jobs is because of maybe how they're treated, or maybe the ad on the front end said they're going to make up to $200,000 a year, but it's really nets out to, 125, whatever that is. And so, that's why I'm a firm believer in that communication from the beginning. So you at least get the opportunity to then tell your story. And drivers really want to be part of a company that's been around for a while, that's growing, and also has other drivers that have been there for years on end. I mean, that's the best type of marketing methods to get a referral in from an existing driver.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're spot on about what they're looking for. They're looking for a home. They're looking for a place to be for a really long time. And I think when they see a driver, very commonly you'll see on people's websites or on their advertising that they're, that there's like driver testimonials. And I think those can be really powerful, even though everyone does them. But I think they kind of want to be that person. They want to be that person that's been there for a really long time, that's that's done that. And I think one of the challenges that the independent contractors face, and part of the reason why there's so much turnover in our industry is just, the industry and the market can be very volatile, and just very up and down. And, it's kind of forces their hand a little bit, but I think that's kind of where the relationships come in at, trying to educate them, help them understand that the market usually straightens itself out. And, that grass isn't always greener. And it's just important that you have those open lines of communication. You're very honest and direct with your drivers, so that they understand kind of the market that they're in, and kind of what they can expect on a daily basis.
You said something that in our first conversation, and I made a note. You said it earlier, but I want to talk about this in a little bit more detail and kind of deep dive. Control your controllables. Yes. I love that phrase, and it's something actually, Jason, I'm using it with my internal team here at KJ. Control your controllables, because there are so many things, especially in the driver's world, that are out of our control. Weather, people, period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going in and out of the ports, detention time. There's so much, but can you talk a little bit more to the audience about controlling your controllables?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just so many external factors that you cannot control. And I think that if you focus on the things that are within your control, that are within your scope, what you can impact, and spend less time worrying and focusing on things that you really don't have the ultimate say in, maybe how that's going to play out. I think it really helps for a lot of reasons. And what I found is manage my team, my people, is just keep kind of saying that over and over again. I think it helps them with how they approach things on a daily basis. It helps kind of with the fundamentals of I can't control if this driver is going to pass their inspection. I can't control, there's a lot of things you can't control, but what you can control is you can control, calling that driver back before the end of the day, that did call you. And you can control, reaching out to the people that are on your work list, your leads, your applicants. And it's just, I think if you approach things that way, you can, you find over time, it really kind of helps you manage yourself, and regardless of what situation you're in. You mentioned things that you can't control. I mean, one of the things that impacted us was the bridge that collapsed. I mean, that's just an external thing that no one saw happening, and it has an impact, and you just have to kind of take that and try to move on with it. And we see it all over the place, especially with the type of work that we're in, and
sure,
all kinds of geopolitical things that can impact shipping lanes, and it's just a lot of things that aren't in your control, and you're trying to make the best of those situations. But from a recruiting standpoint, with my team, it's just making sure that you're very available. You're communicating with your drivers, communicating with our folks in the field as much as possible. Over communicate.
I think that's such a great message. Recruiting, safety, whether you're the C-suite or secretary, and even being an independent contractor, because you're managing yourself, controlling your controllables is such a great message. And it's something that, like I mentioned, is something that we talk about often now internally, and talk about it with our clients, because it's so easy in today's world to say, oh, this happened, so we're just going to blame that or blame the driver, right? And so, but nothing really comes out of that. If anything, it's just more negative behavior, and it ends up snowballing. And so if you look at, okay, well, yeah, a driver said that they were accident free and could pass the drug test, but they didn't. That all you can control is the communication, that you actually communicated everything that's required, whether it's written or verbal. And the rest is, you kind of have to leave it, and move on to the next candidate. So I think that's just such a great message across the board.
Yeah. And another thing that I try to tell my recruiters too is this, one thing is you need to get used to rejection. You're going to hear no, and you got to be able to move on to the next candidate if something like that plays out, like you just said. It's you did what you were supposed to do and didn't work out for this reason or that reason, but move on to the next one and don't let it impact you with the next relationship you're trying to build with your work list and the drivers that we're trying to bring in the door.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to jump over to retention. Retention very much is a two-way relationship. It starts with the expectations, the first conversations with the recruiters, and plays all the way through. As we know, industry averages first 90 days, for 6 months typically is where we see that high turnover. But can you talk about any unique programs that you guys have over at the ContainerPort around retaining your drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the programs that we're trying to put in place is we're in the process of doing actually now is we're trying to create a kind of more of an extended onboarding program where we're going to offer we're going to have different additional training for independent contractors when they sign on post them getting started. So we didn't really want to add more time to like their first day and give them more things to do that first day, because there's already a lot of information that we're throwing at them they're trying to absorb. And one of the things that I try and tell people is think about it like your first day on the job. You're a little overwhelmed, and it's a new environment, and it's the same for them. And so what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and build out that program so that they're getting a little more attention and a little bit more assistance and support, because each driver's challenges are going to be unique. It's not a one size fits all approach that's going to work for every driver. Every driver has different challenges. And one of the things we're going to try and do with our training is make the training a little more tailored to each candidate, so that based off their experience, the training that they're doing is maybe a little bit more geared towards what they've done in the past or what they haven't done in the past. That way that it has a little bit more of like a maximized value. So it's not just a cookie cutter kind of approach that everyone does the same thing, because some drivers maybe don't need to go through something like this, whereas others do. So,
right, like everyone's learning curve is different. Everyone's experience is different. Where they came from, so what variables? I mean, I love this program, and I truly believe in it's not a one size fits all. I mean, I think that applies to so many different things. I know on the advertising side, we have averages, but like it's not a one size fits all. Every company recruits a little bit differently. Now, there's some best practices, but everyone recruits differently. But as far as the drivers and that 30 days training period, is that how you're describing it, calling it the training period?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to call it. I mean, really, it's. I think the idea would probably be is to build it out over a longer period of time, so they're getting continued support. But we're just going to start with those first 30 days and build on top of it from there. But with our work setup too is our drivers. A lot of them go to the terminal every day that they're working out of, because it's more localized work. And another thing that really can benefit us in our situation is they go into an office every day, or they a lot of times they get to see their dispatch, they get to see their fleet manager, they get to see a terminal manager, and that's where those relationships come in. We kind of on our end we build the relationship. We kind of started off, but it's taken from there, and I think that's something that also helps that early turnover and retaining of drivers is building on those relationships, getting to know them on a personal level, understanding what their motivations are, so that you can kind of manage them and then put you in a position to kind of coach them through some challenges and try and allow them to be the most successful independent contractor that they can be, because that's ultimately what they want. We want the same thing. It's just trying to find a way to work together to achieve that.
And if you think about it, recruiting and retention is so much psychology, right? In what we do in the business world. And so, at the end of the day, most people want to do good, right? There's maybe a low percentage out there, and there's a slew of issues of why they're like that and their parents. But majority of people want to do well. They want to be, they want to be the best independent contractor that they can be. They want to be safe. They want to have good relationships with the dispatchers. But it does tie into controlling your controllables to give them that platform and to coach them to get there, and make them that best independent contractor that they could potentially be. And I think by having that, you guys are very lucky in the opportunity to build a relationship on a daily basis with the independent contractors. That's often a challenge, obviously, across our industry on different verticals. But being able to have that relationship and build upon it, learn about their husband, their wives, the kids, that's what keeps drivers at a company. Because pay, as we know, Jason, apples to oranges across the board. It's pennies on the dollar when you're looking at you know competitive rates, right? It's not hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. It's a couple hundred bucks, maybe $1,000. But when you look at why drivers actually leave a company, and it's because they really just didn't have a good relationship with that company. They didn't feel valued. They didn't feel heard.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, even before we started this off, you asked me a personal question. You remember some from our last conversation, and that goes a long way when you're talking to somebody, and because it makes them feel like last time we talked, you listened, and that you care. And yeah, I think it just means a lot to them. And yeah, we're definitely in a position where we have an advantage in that we get a lot more face time with our drivers and a lot of other people in the industry, where it's maybe a little more longer haul, and things are a little more of a centralized type setup with who they're talking to. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's getting to know that person, because each person's got individual challenges that are a little bit different. I mean, for us, a big thing is people who haven't done intermodal work before.
Sure.
They're going to require probably a different approach when they get started than somebody who's done this type of work before. It's just so you can't apply the same practices to each person, because it's not going to have the same impact. So we're definitely in a position of advantage when it comes to that. But you kind of nailed it too on the relationship part. I mean, it's what we do versus what our competitors do. It's very similar. So we're in the trucking business, but we're also in the people business. And the better you can do at that part, I think the better you're going to do it at retaining your quality drivers.
Yeah, so with the intermodal piece, that's a learning curve. So this 30-day training that you're going to be, adding into your overall program seems like that's going to be a really great opportunity for drivers that haven't had experience with intermodal work, really learn it and ask questions and develop a true understanding of it, so that in the long run they'll be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it too is kind of getting a feel for the driver on the front end as a recruiter. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to look at their previous history and see what they've been doing, and it requires a lot of patience working in intermodal. So after a while, you kind of get to know who you think will be a good fit for making a transition in intermodal, and who might not be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely are going to need a little more attention as they get started. It's definitely different than other parts of the industry.
Absolutely. I want to move over to recognition, our third and favorite R.
Mhm.
Let's talk about cultivating a culture of appreciation. Your company is fortunate; you're able to see the drivers every day. But talk to me more about building that culture of appreciation. I also believe too that not everyone deserves. We shouldn't be in a world where everyone gets a gold medal, right?
Right.
So what's that balance, and how do you go about that at the ContainerPort Group?
So, I mean, how we try to do that is there's various different reasons why you would recognize someone. Sometimes it can be for been here for a while, or
Right.
you've done something well.
Yeah.
One of our programs is we have a safety all stars program, and that is that's a way to try and recognize the independent contractor for doing a good job and hitting certain markers as far as safety and performance is concerned. And that's a good program for us. We usually do it quarterly, and It's a way to recognize them for doing a good job. But you also kind of, like I just said too, there's also a program that we have that's called CPG Legends, and it recognizes some of our longer serving independent contractors. That's a really fun one. It's a really fun one for myself and some of the people on my end, because it's really fun to recognize those individuals that have been with you for a really long time. But it's pretty exclusive club, I mean, a lot of people coming in the door, they're looking at a long time before they're going to get that one.
Yeah.
So it's that one's kind of a fun one, I think, more for us, and it's a little more exclusive. But we're always trying to find different ways to recognize drivers, and it doesn't always have to be an award. It doesn't have to be a certificate. Sometimes it's just as simple as saying thank you and following up with someone and saying, hey, I appreciate what you did today, and or helping out that new driver, or covering the load for us. We know you were on your way home, or whatever it might be. I mean, sometimes that recognition doesn't have to be anything fancy or special. It just has to be recognition itself.
That is so true. And I was speaking to a client, during this challenging freight market yesterday, and we were talking about recognizing their drivers, and and she said, we just, our profit margins are low. We don't have extra, cash. I said, it's not about that. It's about just saying thank you and building that into the culture to the drivers, knowing their name. And it's as simple as that. And as things change and as things grow, and then absolutely you want to have, a Safe Driver of the Year award, and some ways that drivers can say to their families too, hey, I'm in this club, right? Because in so many ways you're not just recruiting, retaining the driver, you're retaining their family. And so by offering these awards and incentives, I'll never forget. I'll just say a quick story here. My grandfather was an engineer, and he worked on the F-14 plane. And there was a big recognition and awards program for his efforts. There's, I think there was like 10 engineers, but I was 7 years old at that time. And I still remember going to that banquet and being so proud of him standing up there. And that's the same with drivers too, them going with their families and standing up there on stage and being recognized by their company. I think that really is recognition. It's all encompassing. It's not just, again, a one size fits all approach.
Right. Absolutely. And like you said, with the family, I mean, that goes a long way. That's, you remember all that. And,
Yeah.
I think any opportunity we get to try and, touch the family, I think that's really important for us to try and, because that's something that's really important to myself. It's really important to the people that work here in this office with me, is their family.
Right.
So, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to get to know someone's family and get to know who they are if you're constantly churning the drivers in your fleet. So one of the benefits of having good retention is it allows you to know the people you're dealing with on a daily basis much better. But that's a great point about family. Anything you can do that can involve the family is always really important. That's something we want to try and do more of. Maybe it's bringing the family to our terminals on a day when we do a cookout, or just those kind of things. It doesn't always have to be a certificate. Right, exactly. Yeah.
It really doesn't. The power of some barbecue on the grill, I tell you that. Throw a couple of hot dogs, hamburgers, sign me up. I'll be there.
Absolutely.
So, Jason, I'd love to ask you, as we start to wrap up, some questions. With your experience, what advice would you give to recruiters that are maybe just starting out in the industry, or looking to improve their overall recruitment strategy and connect and build those relationships with drivers?
I would say my experience has been is talked about control your controllables. I mean, that's a great way to approach a lot of different things. When it comes to trying to, as far as recruiting goes, I would always try and learn as much as you can. Always try and learn more. There's plenty that I still have that I need to learn, and I still learn things on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
But knowledge is really important, continuing to grow that knowledge base. I would also say, really focus on trying to make that connection, with the driver as quick as possible, whether it's something personal or, talking to them about maybe where they're at now and maybe some of the struggles that they have. I mean, I think that's really important. If you know what their motivation is, that's really important because then you can kind of talk and compare it to like, they're looking for this and here's what we have to offer. Maybe it's not a great fit today, but you're going to know that and you're going to be able to talk to them about that. Sometimes we talk to drivers and it's not a great fit. What we do is just not a great fit for them. But if it is, you can hit that and you can get to that really quickly if you've made that connection. You've gotten to know what their motivation is and what they're looking for, what they're expecting, and what they're hoping for with their next carrier.
That's really, really good advice. And I do want to ask, we mentioned this earlier about, it's readily so easily to apply for positions these days. Back, before, 10, 20 years ago, it was all paper fax. How do you balance AI automation with that human approach? Do you guys adapt? Have you guys adapted any, SMS or emails internally to help improve the overall recruiting process?
Yeah, we've got some of that built in, some of those like automated responses that go out at various points in the process. And, I think for some drivers, I think it's helpful, very helpful for them. I think some drivers are, they still just want to be called, it doesn't matter if you email them because some drivers probably don't read their email. So each driver is a little bit different, but I think if you can find ways to maybe try and allow you to cast a wide net, build some efficiencies into your process, if you can go from talking to X number of drivers to Y number of drivers, that can make a big difference in your output and your production. So we've done a little bit of that, and I think we're going to continue to look at ways to try and work a little smarter, but also knowing that the communication piece, the relationship piece is something that if you're not really communicating and you haven't had really good conversations with a driver and you're bringing them on, it's almost like you're setting them up to maybe not be as successful as they could be had you maybe prepared them a little bit differently. They're going into it maybe a little bit more blind. And so trying to find ways to do that, trying to different things, but ultimately the most important thing is that you're available and communicating with drivers.
I think that's well said. We're in the, we are exploring that on our end a lot with clients. But I always say this: it has to be a delicate balance, and we still need the human element, no matter what, because we're like you said, Jason, we're in the people business. And we want to set these drivers up for success, and some things just can't be done. But there can be a lot of efficiencies that can help recruiters alleviate their workload and have better conversations. But again, when it comes down to it, the best connections are definitely going to be by phone. And Jason, as you know, we have 250,000 drivers now that follow us through our platform, Fifth Wheel Hub, and they listen in. And so could you tell the audience a little bit more about the opportunities you have available at ContainerPort?
Yeah, absolutely. We're an intermodal company, so we haul pretty much all international containers. So they're 20-foot, 40-foot containers. Our independent contractors are going in and out of ports and rail yards each day. We have 29 terminals across the United States, primarily east of the Mississippi, but we are expanding, and we're looking for independent contractors pretty much in every market. One of like I said earlier, one of the best things about our company and our line of work is the home time. Our drivers are home daily. And another thing that I would say is if that's important to you, home time is important to you, family is important to you. I think ContainerPort Group is a company you should take a look at. We're very big on that. That's one of our core values, and we're actually a family-owned company as well. We have been from the very beginning. Same family still owns us all this time, and it's just really important to us. We've got a lot of folks in our terminals that have been there for 10 years, 20 years, and there's a lot of familiarity in a lot of our locations, a lot of familiarity at our corporate office. Family is really important to us. So if you're looking for some place that you're going to have good relationships, you're going to, get good home time, the home time that you want, whether it's home daily or home throughout the week, we typically have that available for you. So I would definitely give us a shout or look us up online, and we'd be happy to tell you more about our story.
Yeah, absolutely. And great news to all the independent contractor drivers. A link to the ContainerPort website and career page will be in the show notes below. So please go ahead and click on that link and check them out. Family owned business, big family owned business, let's just say that. But a company that really respects you and wants to make sure it's a good fit from the beginning. So definitely recommend checking them out. Jason, thank you so much for being on our show. It was a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you, Jackie. It was great being here. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I enjoyed this quite a bit.
Good, good. And thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Attention Retention. Remember, the road to success begins with effective recruitment, thoughtful retention, and genuine recognition. Feel free to share this knowledge with your peers and industry colleagues. Your sharing can make a difference, and together we can empower the industry to thrive. Until next time.